Sup dogs, and welcome to Monthly Developer Review. It's a very chillax series where I get to sit back, talk about all the things I did last month, but with an emphasis on all the things I developed in my latest project. I was about to say Caster's Trap, which by the way, is still relevant. If you haven't tried it, try it out. Monthly Developer Review, MDR for short, is a little bit of a derivative of the last two monthly videos I've been uploading, where I talk a little bit more about the development side and less about the other things, but don't worry, I'll still talk about them. I actually been loving the fact that you guys have been commenting about the animes that I've been watching. In a way, I feel like we're having this like small anime club within this video, and it's kind of just awesome. Anyway, let's talk about Captive. Or what I've been recently saying to myself, Captive, YAMI! So, Captive is a horror game that emphasizes on MZ3D. It's a plugin that converts RPG Maker into 3D. You play as Alan, who is an online personality, so someone who's like a YouTuber or Twitch streamer, and then they get, well, kidnapped. So like any fan who's a kidnapper, he locks you up in his basement, forces you to play his game, or tries to force you to play his game, but also invites you up for dinner in a way to fall in love with him. And as odd as that sound, this is actually your chance for your escape. You can examine the area, gather clues, or try to talk to the guy and make him actually believe that you are actually into him. Of course, if you're a little bit too obvious, then he will catch on, so try to be a bit subtle with it. So with all that said, let's talk about the things I actually did in the month of March. And there's a bit of spoilers here, so if you're not interested in those spoilers, then do skip on ahead, but I'll try my best to not overly spoil them. So of course, all of February was creating this goddamn cube. But all of March was finessing this goddamn cube. So it's a puzzle cube, 6 sides, 6 different puzzles, and while you're trying to solve this puzzle, there's a killer, or there's your kidnapper who's roaming to try and find you and, well, send you back to his basement, essentially. This particular sequence takes place in a section of the game that, who knows where it appears. Anyway, the important thing here was to be able to switch between the different sides and to do it in such a way that it didn't seem too confusing. And I decided to come up with this little map. Originally, I thought about creating it in Effectsier, like an actual 3D cube that will switch faces, and each side is numbered instead of the layout that you see there. But it was getting late in the day, and I was like, I don't want to go into Effectsier. Late night developer TheOdie is just an 8-year-old throwing tantrums. But that 8-year-old always wins. Though, if I'm to be honest, I think this laid out version is actually much more easier to read and understand than it is with the 3D cube. And then of course I also created this info sort of thing. You can actually press the I button to make it appear or disappear. And it gives you a little hint of each puzzle, because after all... Oh no, that's spoilers, I can't say that. Ignore the after all. One of the funnest things about using MZ3D is actually just manipulating the camera angles and getting some very fun stuff. Like, here's one that I actually created like a day or two ago, and I think the scene really speaks for itself, but it's kind of fun. Not really more to say other than that. Just that I think it's cool. Anyway, another thing I had to work on was this. The great outdoors, da-da-da-da. Yeah, not gonna lie, when it comes to creating outdoor tile sets, it actually terrifies me. Which is weird, because if we just look at this, it's a lot more simpler than the indoor tile sets. But for some reason, it's just like, man, I really don't want to make outdoor tile sets. I think the real fear behind that is the fact that I don't know what to do with grass. Because on one hand, if you're too detailed, then it's gonna look overcluttered, and then on the other hand, if you're not detailed enough, then it's gonna look too plain and, well, generically green. And then there's trees and trying to figure out how to create leaves, and then all the shadowing that's involved with leaves and branches. And then you gotta figure out, well, should I add rocks? Should I add mushrooms? Oh my god. Actually, the one thing that I struggled the most on was creating the house, because I never created a Tileset house before. Okay, that's a lie. I did create a Tileset house. Which I created for the RPG Maker AI project, Whisper in the Woods. Which also, by the way, is free, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't. But yeah, that was a little bit different because that's a cabin, and this is an actual house, and I was like, what do I do? So I actually spent some time Googling modern looking houses, and then pixel art houses, and I tried fusing it together. And then I had to try and figure out what works for my style, something that's simple and not overly complicated, because I know for a fact that I can't do anything that's overly complicated. But at the same time, if I make it too simple and plain, it's gonna look weird. I like to think I found that balance that actually works out with this map, but hey, you guys do tell me. One of the things that I have started striving for and working towards is a much more simpler art style, and I decided to inspire off of a lot of the old Pokemon games. I find that theirs is very simple, yet at the same time, very nice looking. I like to think that Pokemon hits in a certain way that's just very warming and familiar and very attracting for a lot of cozy gamers, or just gamers in general. One of the things I learned in this indie game development journey is that if I spend too much time in something, especially when I'm only considered as a novice, then it can actually lead to my downfall, just because I only have so much time as a single person, whereas a giant AAA company or even a small company at least have several people so that they can multiply an 8-hour day into 16 hours in one day, and if you have like 5 employees, then 40 hours in one day, for example. So it's really incredible to see what a company can do versus what an individual person can do. And that's one of the things that no one really talks about or acknowledges. Anyway, I digress a bit. I think moving forward, I'm going to stick to the simpler style and really inspire off of Pokemon and really that era of pixel art. I think it actually is possible for me to finish this by the end of April, but I haven't done much with uploading anything onto Instagram. I haven't created the Steam game page yet, so I'm gonna hold off on the launch and wait until like May, maybe even June, to actually release the game. Just because getting your game out there is actually that important. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it for game dev. Now we can talk about other random stuff. I'll go ahead and start with One Piece the trading card game. So it was actually a very heavy One Piece month for me and my friends, and we're jumping into all these different pre-releases to try and get all these new cards. For those of you who do not know about the TCG world and pre-releases, there's a date where the new set or the new booster set goes onto the shelves of all these different stores, but the pre-release happens a week beforehand, so that all the local gaming stores where you can actually go and have a tournament at, they sell you 6 booster packs, and you rip them open and you create a deck out of those 6 booster packs. Each booster pack, I believe, comes with 12 cards, and guaranteed are commons, uncommons, and rares. But the rarity for these packs actually goes up to super rare and to secret rare. And then if you want to get a little bit more complicated, there's like a dotted line rarity called alternative arts, and of course, as you can imagine, they're more rare than the super rares. Now we can get even more crazier and more complicated by talking about what the community calls the manga rare. Basically, this is the rarest card in every single set. It's very hard to come by, and they're also the card that gets really expensive. So if we're able to crack one, and when I say crack one, I mean open a pack and find it. If we're able to crack one, then it's actually the greatest thing in the world. As a matter of fact, this is a fun story because I got a few fun stories. But as a matter of fact, someone who actually pulled that card managed to sell that card for $2,000. And you gotta admit, that's pretty awesome. So anyway, at these pre-release tournaments, I didn't win any at all. In general, you play 4 rounds or until there's one person who's undefeated. And that wasn't me. Usually I go 3 wins and then 1 loss, or 2 wins and 2 losses. But the real reward for these tournaments, believe it or not, is not to actually play in a tournament. People actually hate pre-release tournaments, myself included. It's because all the decks looks the same and it gets really redundant and kind of boring at some point. The real reward comes with buying a 6 booster packs and seeing what you pull. So at one of the pre-release tournaments, me and one of my friends, I'll call him Eggplant just for simplicity's sake, but we decided to trade 1 booster out of the 6 packs that we each got, and I opened all of my packs and boom, my most expensive card was probably like $1.50 at best. All I hit were rares. All the rares are guaranteed. The super rares is what you hope for in these pre-release tournaments, and of course anything above that is just like the cherry on top. It's not common for that to happen. There's usually just one person in the entire tournament who that happens to, and it happened to have been me. Eggplant, on the other hand, he opens all his packs. He got 1 SR, then he got a alternate art SR, then he opens my pack. And lo and behold, in that pack was the rarest card in the set. If it wasn't for the fact that we were friends, I would have been so mad. But we're not. We're actually a group where we pool all our cards and all our money together to buy these cards and make decks out of. So, Shazam! Isn't it gorgeous? Whew. The value did drop significantly since pre-release from like 2.4k. Now it's hovering around $1,000, maybe a little bit more than that. I think 1.4 to be specific, but it's kind of just crazy to think about how expensive these trading card games can get. Which is super ironic because I'd say you could get a good deck with $100, maybe even less. It's just that all the alternate arts, manga rares, they're the expensive ones that will drive the collectors insane. Or more like, it drives the players insane because the collectors keep spending more and more money, increasing their value, and making it hard for us to get stuff. But all respect to you guys, though. You are also keeping the game very, very much alive. Oh yeah, and also, you guys are probably wondering what this cup is about. Diplomacy is not an option. I'm actually going to talk about that next. PAX East! I went there, baby! I usually go to PAX East every year, and I will say that it has lost its glamour and its shimmer since before COVID years. Before COVID, I'd say there was a lot of AAA companies, and nowadays there's only so many of them, like you could actually count them. Nintendo was the biggest one. Final Fantasy was there. Baldur's Gate was there. Path of Exile was there. And those are the big ones that I remembered. Oh yeah, there was also Mountain Dew. So it kind of just goes to show you how much PAX East at least has changed over the years. Where before COVID, we would see the big 3, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. Now it's just Nintendo still hovering around. And Nintendo actually had 2.5 booths. One that was just dedicated to the Pokemon trading card game. The 0.5 was for you to go up and take pictures with these Pokemon balloons. And then there was also the Nintendo gaming booth, which was also just Pokemon. Admittingly, I do kind of miss those pre-COVID days, because it was always nice to see how big these booths can get and how these super mega companies would spend so much money on those booths and have so many cool prizes to hand out. But now I'd say it's more ruled by the indie gaming companies, and of course, no offense to them, I'm one. But you can really see the difference between budgets. And I will say, the indie game companies, they really killed it. They did a fantastic job. Overall, personally, I did enjoy it. I kind of always enjoy PAX East. I always love just being in that environment, going up to different booths, looking at different things, talking to the indie game devs just to hear about their games and what sort of cool and fun things they've been making. This one in particular caught my attention the most. I think it fits me just perfectly. It's not exactly a visual novel, but it does have a lot of narration to it. And the puzzle aspect is very Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, where you have to kind of read in between the line to gather clues. And I thought that was really cool to see. Not to mention, it's also pixel art. So it also inspires me a little bit to do a little bit better and a little bit more. Overall, I didn't take too many pictures while I was at PAX. I think I only took 2. One with a couple of Pokemons. My friends were taking pictures with this, and I was like, alright, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. While I was up there, I was like, wow, I kind of feel like a dad at my current age, and these are my kids. So I kind of posed like that, and then I sent it to my girlfriend, and she was just like, no. The other picture I took was at the Final Fantasy booth. It looks super awkward, but I can explain. So there was a battle challenge for this booth where you had to challenge a raid boss. I have not played an MMORPG since like 08 or 09, back when Mabinogi was in its prime. And Mabinogi didn't really have raids. I think they technically had a version of raids, but it wasn't exactly the same thing as what Final Fantasy was. It was my first time also playing the game. So I was really depending on my 3 other friends and then the 4 randoms who also joined us. But anyway, I played the samurai, for those who actually do know the game a little bit better. And just to explain my experience, I was dead for like a solid minute. And I played as the DPS. So if that's not telling, I don't know what is. It's actually kind of funny because later on my friends were talking about the raid some more, and they were telling me about how the other party was saying to LB, and in my head I was like, LB? Is that left mouse button? Because I was clicking on the raid boss, and all the left mouse button would do was just show me their HP and their information. It didn't really do anything at all. But as it turns out, LB stands for Limit Breaker, or Limit Break, which is your ultimate. Like I even knew how to do that. It just goes to show you only need 7 people who knows how to raid in order to beat the PAX East raid challenge, battle challenge. Now as for this photo, I just asked my friend, who's the DPS? And I'll go stand next to it. And it was like, oh yeah, that dude. He's like the closest thing to a DPS here. So I walked on over, and then all of my friends, they just stood on the other side. Because that's where all their favorite characters were. Or at least that's what they made me believe. That is right. I was the imposter. Anyways, I was like super awkward in the photo. I was like, wait, why are you guys all the way over there? How do I even pose again? Alright, that's PAX East. It was also a very fun experience because there was just a lot of board games and tabletop tends to be one of my favorite things, and it was also very fun to just go and see and buy a bunch of different board games. I ended up buying this from Jap Anime, that booth, and essentially Testament is Final Fantasy, but as a board game. 2 to 4 players. Maybe even 1 to 4. Yeah, I feel like it could even be 1 or 4. Overall, pretty fun. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about this thing. Diplomacy is not an option. It's actually one of the booths, indie booths that I walked up to. And it's actually kind of funny because I just walked up to it and I kind of just stared at it. I kind of just blinked out for a moment staring at the screen, and then the developer walked up to me and was like, need something? Can I help you in any way? And I was just like, oh, I saw the mug, and I was like, how do I win the mug? It was just spin the wheel, and it took me 2 tries to get to it, and bam, I got it. It's actually a pretty neat game. Well, I think the trailer actually speaks for itself. Alright, that was the PAX experience, and now moving on to anime. For this month, I watched 1 movie and 1 show. The movie was The Disappearance of Suzumiya. And I am so glad I watched that movie because it was just really, really good. It's super timey-wimey, and if you've seen the anime, then I would highly suggest you go ahead and watch it. Spoiler free, Kyun wakes up and he finds himself in a world where Haruhi suddenly disappears, and that the club is not formed and the characters do not know each other except for Kyun. He remembers everything, but everyone else don't remembers a single thing. So in a way, he kind of gets to live his normal life. Spoiler version, and this actually goes into the series if you also haven't finished watching that. So I'll give it a couple of seconds for you to go ahead and skip ahead. Okay. The movie actually jumps back in time to one of the episodes where Kyun actually travels back in time to when he first meets Haruhi, and it's actually so fun and so cool to see that happen. Like, I am such a fan of the timey-wimey stuff. Love Doctor Who, love Steins Gate, so of course, love this. I'm just a sucker for it all. And it was just so really fun to watch and see the characters develop some more through that. It did end in a rather confusing way, where it didn't explain what happens when Kyun, I'm gonna just outright say it, when he gets stabbed. It doesn't explain who comes to rescue them, and that's because the movie is based on the light novel, but the light novel actually ends in that way. However, the next chapter or the next book actually explains it at the very beginning. And it's just Kyun, just a couple of moments after the ending of the movie, traveling back in time to fix all of that. So, yeah, it's not as glamorous and, oh my god, we're gonna see something 10 chapters later to go back in time again to this moment. It's literally just the next scene, but they didn't include it in the movie. Maybe they wanted to make a second movie, but they decided not to for whatever reason. I don't know. Anyway, I had to look that up on a Wikia site, so that was about it. As for the show I've been watching, it is Mob Psycho 100. I finally decided to tackle Mob Psycho. I actually watched the first season last year, and then I finally picked up season 2 and 3 this year because I had Hulu last year. And this year, now I have Crunchyroll that I can finally watch off of. And I am so glad I decided to pick up on season 2 and finish season 3 because I actually enjoy the series so very, very much. Like, Mob is just such an interesting character. I feel like he's a lot of who I was as a kid. Just super awkward, very quiet, and also very, what's the word? Gullible. Where if people were to tell me one thing, I would almost instantly believe it. But anyway, going back to the series, I actually find that very, very unique because it's not only an action show, I feel like it's also a coming-of-age show, because we actually see Mob grow significantly from season 1 into season 3. And it's a type of growth that's also very relatable that we don't really see in a lot of these sort of animes. Like, we have My Hero, for example, and of course Deku is growing from that gullible kid to a more responsible one, but it's more related towards all the action and all the hero versus villain sort of situation and justice versus evil, as opposed to what Mob is going through, which is more relatable things of combating shyness and just finding himself for where he is compared to his other classmates. Anyway, the characters are very quirky, very fun, and just to talk about season 2 and 3 a little bit, in season 2, the first half kind of feels like little adventures here and there, and then the second half actually gets very My Hero Academia-y, because it really felt like good guys versus bad guys. So if you're into that, then you're gonna love it. Me, I'm a sucker for it, so of course I loved it a lot. Season 3, on the other hand, did the exact opposite, where the first half felt like an arc, and then the second half kind of felt like little adventures kind of mashed together into mini arcs. But that first half was concentrating on Dimpo, who is one of the main side characters that befriends Mob. And I'm kind of glad that they did that, because Dimpo, who joins the crew, kind of just joins it, and we don't really learn too much more about him. He kind of just always been there. And then in season 3, we finally got to build that relationship and see it really fleshed out, and it was good to watch. The second half of it felt like little conclusions for each of the other side characters that we kind of grew to know but didn't have developed yet. There was actually this like 2 episode that made no sense to me that involved aliens, and I had no idea what was going on. But then the last 3 episode, or last 4 episode, was the arc on Mob and just going full circle with him and his main relationship with his master. The anime is complete. The manga is also complete. Highly recommend the show. Enjoyed it very much. If you're looking for something with action and growth in your character, and also quirkiness with characters, this is the one to watch. Alright you guys, that's pretty much it for the month of March. Hope you guys had a fantastic March. I hope you guys are excited for Captive YAMI. And also, well, continue to watch some anime. Have no idea what I'm going to do for the month of April, but I will figure that out. And hopefully I'll have created a Steam page by the end of April. I have a lot of traveling trips to do for the month of April, so I don't know. It's going to be a little bit wonky. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next one. Till then, later. Boom.